Stay tuned for the next guest.
Well, we're back right here in the studio, and I hope everyone out there is enjoying their evening. We have with us right now our first guest. We have with us Nawaf Almahdi, and Nawaf is an English teacher, cultural researcher, and blogger. Nawaf, welcome to our program, Hala Kuwait.
Thank you, Tariq. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to have you with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself. That title is quite a long one. I mean, an English teacher, researcher, a blogger. Tell us more about your background, about yourself, please.
Thank you. So I consider myself to be a multidisciplinary individual. So, like you mentioned, I'm an English teacher, a cultural researcher, and
You like
a
blogging
blogger.
too,
Yes,
huh?
yeah, I'm into blogging as well.
Okay.
So I started doing cultural research since my time as an undergraduate student, but I did it mostly discreetly, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And then I decided to share more about my research and studies when I started to travel a little bit more, and I wish to include certain sites and places where people around Kuwait and around the world can visit, because usually the media does not cover these sites as often, because they would mostly cover the most surface level sites or the most popular ones.
Yeah, well, before we came on air, you were telling me about your visit to South Africa.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about that, please, Nawaf.
Yeah, so one of the common misconceptions with South Africa as a country, they would say it's a hostile environment and that it's full of danger. But when I visited there with my family, after doing enough research on it, it's actually quite a lovely country. So we went to the state, to Cape Town, which is the capital of the country, and then to Port Elizabeth, a safari-based county in South Africa, to which I encourage anyone who is an environmentalist and an animal lover to go visit.
You're interested actually in artistic anthropology. So tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, so anthropology is part of the Department of Humanity, or in the chain of humanities, which is very much highly underappreciated. But to answer your question, artistic anthropology is an interdisciplinary field where it combines humanities, literature, politics, and other fields by studying art not only as a form, but also studying its origins, but also its culture. So recently, as an example, in my blog, I started to talk about a little bit about table art in Kuwait's public schools as a form of cultural anthropology.
Tell us more about that.
Of course. So the reason why I find table art as a powerful example, because they basically reflect what the student is thinking, what their social class is, but also it reflects what they're feeling deep down from their heart and from their mind itself.
Okay. So now tell us, we're going to switch gears into teaching.
Yeah.
How you got into teaching then?
Well, okay, that's a funny story. As a child, I wanted to be a doctor, but when I found out that I wasn't really that good in natural sciences, I looked up to both of my parents who do have experience in the training field, but also to my cousin who is an ELT supervisor in the Ministry of Education. And my father gave me this very amazing piece of wisdom that I want everyone to learn about. An engineer, a doctor, and a lawyer can provide solutions, but who creates these people? A teacher does, because a teacher is a provider of all solutions.
That's very, very well said, and words of wisdom from your father there.
Yeah.
So you've been teaching now for how many years have you been teaching?
2 years with the Ministry of Education.
And how is it going? You like it?
Yeah, the school I work in is quite great, actually.
Okay, that's very good. I'm sure the audience watching right now can see your enthusiasm and passion that you have for the various interests that you have in your life. So tell us the link between cultural research and teaching English, which you teach, correct? You teach English.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Right, so after completing the Cambridge CELTA, I've learned from both of my tutors that language teaching must always include culture. Because if you teach a language without substance or power, you would lose not only its meaning, but it would very much disinterest the learner itself. So in many of my lessons as a teacher, I like to include my travels, my cultural experiences with people from different nationalities. I mostly do that with lessons that includes speaking, writing, and listening, because a lot of our students don't really intentionally deviate outside of the most popular Western countries, such as the United States, England. So I would love to break that barrier by showing them that other countries are as interesting as both the United States and England.
Okay. So tell our audience now a little bit about your travels and how does it relate to your interest in cultural studies.
Of
And give
course.
us some examples, please.
So my most recent trip was to Abu Dhabi. I've dug deep into Abu Dhabi's artistic culture, especially the Louvre in Abu Dhabi.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, so not only do they bring out artifacts, paintings, and other pieces of work from France, they would actually bring locally made artwork, which is something very much underrated in the GCC society. I think more people should visit into them, and they should dig a little bit more deeper into the GCC's artistic history rather than just the culture as well.
Okay, so tell us now about your experience as a writer and how you link this hobby with your social media.
Of course. Another funny story. So when I was young, I didn't really much enjoy writing because I thought it was just time consuming. But when I was in the third grade during summer, my mom actually sat me down and gave me a couple of writing prompts. She said, "You're not getting out of this table until you finish these prompts."
All right.
So I just sat down there and continued to write and write and write because I have racing thoughts. After that, she said, "Sit down and reflect your work." And I was impressed that I was able to produce that much. But most of my publications came out during the COVID pandemic. Yeah, because I've worked with online platforms, one in Egypt and the other was in England.
Tell us more about that.
Of course. So the Egyptian online magazine I've worked with is called Milky Way magazine. And before that, I also published articles, poetry, flash fiction with my alma mater, the American University of Kuwait's magazine known as AUK Voice. Even during the pandemic, as an alumnus, I had the privilege of publishing one last publication with them during the pandemic.
Okay, great to hear that you have such a wide scope of interests, and looks like you have very supportive parents. Your mother also cheering you on and supporting you, and she's also here in the studio with us this evening. Any words that you have for your parents?
Yeah, thanks, I guess. We'll talk more about it at home.
All right then. Well, tell us now, Nawaf, have you given any creative writing workshops?
Well, just one, to be honest. That was just during the COVID pandemic. But I would love to give a couple of more, because I think the problem with creative writing in Kuwait in general is that they mostly use very bland prompts, and they would often discourage that talent with. I have students, and I'm very much privileged to teach a lot of creative students.
Good.
Yeah, and I try to not deviate from the curriculum that they give me, but also try to relate it to the current lessons I'm teaching at school.
Excellent. Good to hear that. And graffiti is an amazing art. You seem to have an interest in that also. So tell us about some of the research that you've done on that, and share some of the information about this art with our audience, please.
So graffiti, as a lot of people just view it as a political tool.
Yeah.
I, as a researcher, I view it more as an artistic symbol, but also as a cultural icon. So
tell us more.
Yeah. So I still remember during my time as an undergraduate student where I took a class called Literary Theory and Criticism. My professor told me at that time that there is something known as semiotics. So semiotics is the art of studying symbols and how we can incorporate it into different fields of humanities. So when you look at it from the perspective of literature, you want to study why was this symbol created? And this is how I relate with graffiti. Now, if you remember when I mentioned about table art, a lot of the table art that I view from my students is mostly Arabic poetry and just random sketches on the table. And I try to understand what was the motive that gave them to write down this piece of literary work on the table. And I honestly want to dig a little bit more into that field, to be honest. But as for graffiti, I enjoy viewing graffiti around Kuwait in general because they provide a hidden story, which not a lot of people take the time to dig deep into. Okay,
so you like to look at it and kind of see what it means and so forth. So tell us about your blogging also. Tell us about that, please.
Of course. So I started blogging in 2021 and 2022. Among the things I do are mostly a little bit of photography.
Good.
Among my hobbies are cooking. I enjoy cooking outside the box.
Okay, so what do you like to cook then?
Yeah, so I enjoy cooking out of the box. So I enjoy foreign cuisines like Chinese, French, and sometimes from North African countries as well.
Excellent. So a lot of different variety in your life, Nawaf, and it was really a pleasure to have you with us right here on Hala Kuwait, and we wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. Any last bit of advice or words for the audience watching tonight?
Yeah, of course. For anyone who wants to get into teaching, you have to know this. Socrates once said that I learn by knowing nothing, because an excellent teacher continues to learn not just from their peers at work, but they actually learn from their students. And you have no idea within my 2 years of teaching that I've learned so much from my students because they are excellent providers of information.
That's great to hear that. Wish you all the best, Nawaf.
Thank you, Tariq.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Well, we'd like to thank our guest, Nawaf Almahdi, English teacher, cultural researcher, and blogger, for his time with us tonight right here on Hala Kuwait. Right now, we're going to go on to our next report, and it's the Green Campaign, so stay tuned for this.